Corporate career sites are finally fixing decade-old problems like mobile applications and poor user experiences. But while employers focus on solving these legacy issues, AI is already reshaping how people discover jobs. So, is your career site ready for what comes next? Keep listening to find out. Support for this podcast comes from Mackie. Mackie enables businesses to build intelligent, science-backed hiring strategies that predict on-the-job performance and adapt as roles and markets change. Companies today face a surge of undifferentiated AI-inflated CVs and often rely on manual screening or inconsistent processes. This leads to missed talent, weaker performance, and a poor candidate experience. Mackie combines science-based assessments, behavioural signals, and autonomous AI agents into one integrated engine. It evaluates every candidate, predicts who will succeed, and continuously improves hiring outcomes. Teams hire faster, more fairly, and at a lower cost, while delivering stronger on-the-job performance and a better experience for candidates and customers. To find out more, you can go to mackiepeople.com. And Mackie is spelled M-A-K-I. And that's mackiepeople.com.
There's been more of scientific discovery, more of technical advancement and material progress in your lifetime and mine than in all the ages of history.
Hi there, welcome to episode 759 of Recruiting Future with me, Matt Alder. There's something paradoxical happening with corporate career sites right now. After years of broken links, mobile application nightmares, and clunky technology implementations, organisations are finally getting the basics right. Mobile experiences are improving, ATS systems are working properly, the long-standing problems we've talked about for years are finally being addressed. However, while we've been busy fixing problems from 2015, the world has moved on. Candidates now expect conversational AI that can answer their questions in real time. They want personalised experiences that adapt to who they are and where they are in the process. Increasingly, they're using LLMs to research employers before they even visit a career site. The question isn't whether your career site works anymore, it's whether it can deliver what candidates now expect. My guest this week is Bas van der Haterd, who runs the industry's largest continuous corporate career site research program. In our conversation, he shares the surprising findings from his 19th year of research and explains what employers need to do to prepare their career sites for an AI-driven future. Hi, Bas, and welcome back to the podcast.
Amazing to be back again.
Always a pleasure to have you on the show. And you are a very frequent visitor. In fact, I think you may have been the guest who's appeared on the show the most times. So really good to have you back. For people who may have missed your previous appearances, could you introduce yourself and tell everyone what you do?
So my name is Bas van der Haterd, and among other things, I run the biggest corporate careers research in the Netherlands. The biggest Dutch corporate careers event is combined with that, and I consult with companies on getting their corporate careers websites better.
Fantastic. So careers websites is what we're talking about today. And this is almost an annual tradition. I don't know how many years in a row you've been on talking about your career site research, but I checked back and it was this time last year that we looked at the research then. So let's come dive straight in. So just a quick bit of background to this research. How long have you been running it and how do you get all the insights and information?
It's actually the 19th year in a row right now. Although during COVID, we did a lesser version of it with just a little fewer sites. But basically, I look at over 500 of the major corporates in the Netherlands, 125 data points. I have students, next year actually an AI bot, but this year I still had students going through all the websites, answering the questions, applying at every major corporate, and everybody is included.
Absolutely. So what's changed? How have things moved on in the last 12 months in terms of career sites? What are you seeing?
Well, the data clearly shows that we have an insane amount of new careers websites, simply because so many things changed massively. There was one of the biggest number of new websites going live last year than I've seen in ages. There was a massive upgrade. One of the things that we actually also saw, probably because of that, was the number of really stupid mistakes that were made. And with really stupid mistakes, I mean links which didn't come to a page that they needed to go to, which had the number of 404 sites that we encountered was way, way bigger. So that's one. Another really interesting part is that even though the number of podcast listens is increasing, everybody loves a podcast, but the number of careers websites linking through a corporate podcast or a careers podcast has dropped.
That's interesting because last year that was sort of the big talking point that we had, that people were using more podcasts in their sort of careers marketing. Did any indication why that might have dropped, or is it, what's your kind of thoughts around it?
I have no clue, to be honest, why. I mean, I can speculate that making a podcast, as you know, is a lot harder than a lot of people think. I can just say that the major corporates have so many fewer people linking to their podcasts on there. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good theory. I think what we've tended to see with corporate podcasts is they kind of go in waves and people start doing them and, do a great job a lot of the time, but maintaining these, particularly with shrinking TA teams and pressure on resources, is very, very difficult. So I'd imagine it's probably a symptom of that. What else had changed?
Yeah, and just to go back to the podcast, sorry, but the weird thing I see in there, Matt, is even though you created it, if you created a good podcast for careers, very often it's eternal content. I mean, not much changes. So if it was a good podcast to begin with about talent or talent development or whatever, those stories should stay relevant. For me, it's weird that they take them off. And that's usually because, and this is a shout out to employer brand people, stop thinking that because it's not new to you that everybody's heard it, because your applicants are probably visiting your website for the very first time.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think that's, one of the things about recruitment marketing content is some of it doesn't go out of date and should still be used, but there is a tendency to think of things in campaigns or years or those kind of things.
So the other thing which was really interesting to see is the amount of D&I content has dropped significantly from over 60% of the companies having a D&I page to less than 50%. However, the number of websites that had no photos of anybody with a migration background, so basically the all-white websites, has also dropped significantly. What we see is that the number of people explicitly saying, we're doing diversity and inclusion are dropping. However, implicitly showing that there are a diverse organization is increasing very rapidly.
That is interesting. And that's obviously very good to see as well.
Yeah. I expected this to be, for example, the American-led, American head office kind of websites. So I actually did an analysis on, was this the all in English websites, which is usually an indication of an international company with a Dutch subsidiary, or is it the only Dutch or the combination language websites? And to my surprise, it wasn't as much the American trying to appease their new great leader who is against this. It turns out that most of the sites where the D&I content got lost, got disappeared, was actually the pure Dutch companies with only a Dutch language website. So I totally did not expect that. I haven't found a reason for it, to be honest.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something to explore further, definitely. What about AI? What's the kind of the impact there?
Well, when it comes to using AI in the website, we see pretty much nothing yet. I mean, there's still almost no chatbots on the Dutch websites, very few. I expect to see an increase. I haven't seen anything. The most surprising thing is we actually, because I hear from so many TA leaders, like we're getting swamped by AI applications. Only 1.5% of all the major corporate websites has a statement for applicants if they can or cannot use AI.
Interesting. That's quite surprising considering what a big sort of debate it is in the industry, isn't it?
Apparently, we're afraid everybody's complaining about it. Everybody has an opinion about it. But to actually formalize the opinion and tell your applicants, like, you are allowed to use it, you're not allowed to use it, you're allowed to use it for this or for that, we don't do that. I actually found one company, by the way, which actually in their application form had a question, are we allowed to use AI for processing your application?
Interesting. They were asking the candidates that.
They were asking the candidate, and they said this will have no impact on your chances of getting the job, but we believe that we should be asking you if we're allowed to use AI to process your application and see about the thing.
Yeah, that's something interesting to watch, definitely. One of the things that we spoke about last time was career sites used to have sort of fairly unsophisticated chatbots on them. And last year you were telling us that those chatbots were disappearing, and we felt that that could be because people were moving towards more sort of conversational AI solutions to help people interact with the website. But that's not, we're not saying that.
Not yet. We see pretty much the same amount of chatbots. We did see a little degradation on quality, but that's probably because the assumption of what a quality chatbot is improves. So because the question is, and literally have students doing this who are potential workers, of course, like, how did you find the quality of the chatbot? Did it answer your questions? And you saw the perceived quality mildly, but decrease.
Yeah, I think because our expectations have got higher because of all the companies who actually implement conversational AI really well, I guess. So it's something else for us to be thinking about as a sector, definitely. One of the things that you always measure as well is ghosting. In a year where there were big increases in applications, huge amounts of concern about the candidate experience, where have we got to on ghosting?
To my surprise, we have the lowest amount of ghosting ever measured in the almost 20 years that we've been doing this.
Wow.
So apparently, because we saw a lot of new websites, but we clearly saw in the way that other things were measured, the register to apply and stuff like that decreased a lot. So we saw a lot of changes of ATSs as well. And I think that we're actually seeing decent ATS implementations, because last year we had one of the highest, or actually the highest number of ghosting ever. And this year we had the lowest ever.
That's interesting, particularly in the context of increasing applications and all those kind of things. Just so people are aware, how do you measure ghosting, as it were, in this bit of research?
We simply apply with a completely bogus resume on a job. Basically, we have a person applying as a, senior financial manager with only working the cash registers at the local supermarket.
Right, okay.
And to give you an idea that the other things which are really interesting, so we literally also apply to be rejected. As little time as possible spent by the recruiter. And for the first time in over a decade, we did not get a single invitation. So the market isn't that desperate anymore. But also for the first time in many years, not a single of our first names got misspelled or completely different name in there.
Wow, interesting. So it does point to better implementation of technology, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. Finally, the problems that we had 10 years ago are sorting themselves out.
It might be another interesting point because, Matt, sorry to interrupt you, but mobile applications, also something we've been struggling with for ages, of course. In 57% of the websites, they still request a resume also on the mobile phone. But the number of organizations that, at least on mobile, does not request a single document, because we still like to simply have the applicant, doubled to now 16%. 10% of the mobile websites actually changes the options they have. But the great thing, 7% actually literally has a statement saying, if you're on mobile, you can still apply, because we're so used to not being able to apply these days that they actually, before the apply button, they have a statement like, we see you're on mobile, you can still apply on your mobile.
And I think it's interesting. These have been big issues for years, and we don't really talk about them very much anymore because there's AI to talk about and the next big thing to talk about. But, our expectations are we can do everything on our mobile. It's something that employers really need to take into account, that do or at least tell them, what the expectations are. And it's good to hear that problem is finally being properly addressed.
The one thing which still isn't properly addressed, by the way, is that if you make a statement on how quickly are you going to be getting a response from us, the people actually keeping their promise, like if you within 2 weeks or something like that, has dropped from 75% to 60%.
Interesting, but that could be where the volume increase is kind of hitting hard, perhaps.
Yeah, and we do the applications in summertime, but we're nice if you say like, oh, we're very sorry, we're not going to make our normal time, we extend it. But that's the one thing we might still need to improve a little on, like keeping people in the loop. Some companies do that really well, others not.
So obviously there'll be people listening who are planning on, upgrading or looking at their career site this year. What would your advice be to people? What do they need to be thinking about? How can they make sure they are working on something that's going to be fit for purpose, solve all these problems, solve the problems from 10 years ago, but also solve this year's problems as well?
Well, I think actually we're now in the stage, Matt, where we should be starting to dream, because I've seen some new features from AI-enabled platforms. I've always been, and I know you have as well, surprised at that we give a returning visitor the exact same website as a new one. While if you go back to Amazon, you get products that you looked at before and it changes based on your previous behavior. I think that's the one thing we need to really start thinking about. How are we going to treat different people in different parts of the process differently on our website? So there's a really, really great piece I think we could dream about. For example, I'm always annoyed by the fact that if you do a search on a job, you see all these small summaries, and usually it's just the first few lines of the job description, right? AI can summarize that very easily for you. So I think we're going to be looking at an insanely great increase of quality if we allow it.
Absolutely. And just targeting the right content to right people, obviously important as well. And we've talked about conversational AI and the fact that it's not happening. But what could that do on a career site? What should people be aspiring to in terms of how AI can make that kind of initial engagements with people who are looking for a job at that particular employer?
I think we're going to see, and I expected that this year, but for next year, I really expect more chatbots, more conversational AI, might be context-aware conversational AI. So if you're looking at a certain job, you can ask it, what's the salary of this job? Or can I do this job remotely, et cetera, et cetera. It might actually be that you want to feed your conversational AI extra information that's not on the website. I also think that we're going to do a sort of reverse recruiting. Here's my resume, which jobs would fit me, or I'm looking for a job where I can do X, Y, and Z. What do you have anything that would fit my desires? I think we're going to a really different level of careers websites in the future. The one thing I now advise every employer branding or TA leader to think about is your website open for LLMs to scrape? Because I've seen several block it because they're trying to block AI applications, which usually have a workaround. However, if I do my research, and you can actually see this in the Google numbers right now and in the searches on Gemini and ChatGPT, tell me which retail stores in Edinburgh have these products because I love to sell them, and what's the benefit? I actually recently did an analysis for one of my customers, asking them, tell me about all the hospitals in Rotterdam and what's the benefit of each and every one for if I want to work there as a nurse. and it literally gives me why I, as a nurse, should, if I looking for more career possibilities, it's the biggest one. If you're looking for education and training, there's a second one which really is better on that. A third one is known for its good work-life balance, and you get to choose.
Makes a lot of sense, and it's technically possible. It can be done. Let's hope that we see some real innovation with career sites in 2026. Bas, thank you very much for talking to me.
Great to be here again.
My thanks to Bas. You can follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can search all the past episodes at recruitingfuture.com. On that site, you can also subscribe to our weekly newsletter, Recruiting Future Feast, and get the inside track on what's coming up on the show. Thanks very much for listening. I'll be back next time, and I hope you'll join me.
This is my show.